In the crushing darkness of the 41st millennium, there are a trillion ways to die before your morning recaf grows cold. But there's only one way to truly live, with absolute, unquestioning faith in the God Emperor of mankind. I am Yorick Voss, assembly line worker 7749 Delta, and this is what it means to exist in the bowels of Hive Tertius on the industrial world of Mordian Prime. My name is a luxury few can afford to use. Numbers define us here in the Underhive, carved into our flesh at birth, along with our work assignments, nutritional allowances, and expected lifespan. If you hunger for tales from humanity's darkest hour, stay with us through this journey into Imperial reality. The Emperor protects those who witness his truth. The Hablock's klaxons shriek at 05 Imperial Standard, the same metallic wail that's dragged me from sleep for the past 11 years. The sound echoes through 10,000 identical chambers, each one a coffin-sized space that houses an entire family. My wife Sira and our daughter Kira press against me in the narrow cot we share, their breathing shallow in the recycled air that tastes of rust and industrial lubricant. The lumens flicker on with a stuttering buzz, casting sickly yellow light across the corrugated metal walls. Condensation drips steadily from the ceiling where the heating pipes run, the same pipes that carry scalding promethium waste from the munitions factories 17 levels above us. The droplets hiss when they hit the floor, leaving small burn marks in the ferrocrete. I slide carefully from the cot, trying not to wake them. Sleep is precious here, and Sira needs every moment she can steal. Her shift at the textile reclamation plant doesn't begin until 07, but the journey through the transit tubes takes nearly an hour when the ancient maglev systems are functioning properly. When they're not, which is most days, she'll walk the 17 kilometers through the maintenance tunnels, breathing recycled air thick with industrial particulates that have already stained her lungs black. The communal ablution chamber serves our entire Hablock, 237 souls sharing 12 water spigots that work on alternating days. The water comes out brown and tastes of metal, but it's been blessed by the Adeptus mechanicus tech priests and treated with holy oils. To complain about its quality would be to question the Emperor's providence, and such thoughts are heresy. I splash the lukewarm liquid on my face and recite the morning catechisms, the words burned into my memory through decades of repetition. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt. Blessed are the ignorant, for they are spared the burden of knowledge. Blessed is the worker, for through toil does he serve the Emperor's will. The reflection staring back at me from the cracked mirror shows a man older than his 31 years. My face is gaunt, cheekbones sharp neath skin that hasn't seen real sunlight in over a decade. The factory air has turned my teeth yellow and carved lines around my eyes that speak of squinting through chemical haze and welding sparks. The number tattooed on my forehead, 7749 Delta, is still crisp and black, renewed every 5 years by the Administratum scribes who track our productivity quotas. Around me, other workers shuffle through their morning rituals in silence. We've learned not to speak unnecessarily. Words can be misinterpreted, reported, investigated. The thought police maintain informants in every Hablock, every work detail, every family unit. Loyalty to the Emperor supersedes all earthly bonds. The morning meal is distributed from a central nutrient dispenser at the end of our corridor. Today's ration is a grey paste made from recycled organic matter, algae, processed corpse starch, and vitamin supplements that taste like bitter metal. The paste provides exactly 1,200 calories, calculated by Administratum nutritionists to sustain a standard worker through an 8-hour shift with minimal waste. We eat standing up, using our fingers to scoop the paste from regulation tin bowls that must be returned immediately for the next shift's use. I finish quickly and make my way to the transit station. The air grows thicker as I descend deeper into the hive, heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies, industrial chemicals, and the ever-present stench of the corpse grinders that process the daily dead. Servo skulls drift overhead like mechanical vultures, their red eyes recording everything, their vox grills crackling with binary cant as they report back to the Adeptus Mechanicus overseers. The transit tube arrives with a grinding screech of poorly maintained metal. The car is packed beyond capacity, 300 workers crammed into a space designed for half that number. We stand pressed together in absolute silence as the ancient machinery carries us towards another day of endless labor. As we descend towards Factory Complex Theta 9, I catch a glimpse through the grimy viewports of the upper Hive spires rising impossibly high above us. Up there, in chambers of marble and gold, the noble houses conduct their business in air that's actually clean. They see real sunlight streaming through crystal windows. They eat food that has color and flavor and doesn't carry the taste of death. But such thoughts are dangerous. I push them aside and focus on the day ahead, on my quota, on survival. The Emperor protects, but only those who serve without question.
Factory Complex Theta 9 stretches before me like the maw of some ancient metal beast, a cathedral of industry where 10,000 souls toil in perpetual twilight. The assembly hall spans nearly 2 kilometers, its ceiling lost in shadow and smoke, supported by Gothic arches that dwarf the workers scurrying below like insects. This is where I've spent every day for the past 11 years, where I'll spend every day until my body fails or my productivity drops below acceptable parameters. My workstation is number 7749 on Assembly Line Delta, producing bolt shells for the Astra Militarum regiments fighting on 17 different fronts across the sector. Each shell must be crafted to exact specifications. Any deviation could mean a lasgun misfires when a guardsman's life depends on it, and that guardsman's death would be my sin to bear before the Emperor's judgment. The assembly line supervisor is Tech Adept Theta 12, more machine than man now after 40 years of faithful service. His left arm has been replaced with a precision Mechanical that can measure tolerances to the nanometer, while his right eye glows with the steady red light of an Auspec scanner. When he speaks, his voice crackles through a vox grill grafted where his mouth used to be, each word accompanied by bursts of binary cant that only other servants of the Omnissiah can understand. Workers 7749 Delta, his mechanical voice rasps as I take my position. Your productivity index dropped 0.3% yesterday. Explain this deviation. I keep my eyes fixed on my workstation's control panel, watching the green runes that indicate proper machine function. The third extruder mechanism was grinding, Tech Adept. I performed maintenance protocols as instructed in the manual. His Mechanical whirs as it processes this information, cross-referencing my claim against the machine spirit's own logs. After several tense seconds, he nods, a gesture that involves half his skull tilting slightly forward. Acceptable. The machine spirit confirms your testimony. Begin production. May the Omnissiah guide your hands. The assembly line roars to life with a sound like a dying titan. Steam hisses from pressure valves while conveyor belts begin their endless march, carrying raw materials from the lower processing levels up through our station. My job is deceptively simple. Take the formed metal casings, inspect each one for flaws, insert the primer mechanism, seal the base, and pass it to the next station, where worker 7750 Delta will add the propellant charge. But simplicity in the Imperium is an illusion. Each bolt shell must be blessed with the proper canticles as it's assembled. Each seal must be marked with the aquila using sanctified stylus. Each inspection requires not just visual examination, but spiritual evaluation. Does this shell carry the Emperor's blessing? Will it serve faithfully when called upon? The slightest doubt, the smallest deviation from protocol, could result in demotion to the corpse starch processing plants. The work requires absolute focus. My hands move in practiced rhythm. Inspect, bless, seal, pass. Inspect, bless, seal, pass. The repetition becomes a form of meditation, a prayer offered through labor. Around me, 9,999 other workers perform their own sacred duties, creating a symphony of industry that honors the God Emperor through production. 2 hours into the shift, the first accident occurs. Worker 6891 Gamma, 3 stations down from me, loses concentration for a split second while handling a primer mechanism. The small explosive detonates in his hands, taking his left index and middle fingers with it. He screams, a brief sharp sound that's immediately swallowed by the factory's noise. The Medicae servitors respond within minutes, their spider-like mechanical legs carrying them swiftly to the injured worker. They spray biofoam on his wounds to stop the bleeding, inject him with pain suppressors and stimulants, then wrap his hand in blessed bandages marked with the aquila. Within 10 minutes, he's back at his station, working with his remaining digits. The lost fingers will be replaced with crude mechanical prosthetics during his rest period, if his productivity scores justify the expense. No one comments on the accident. No one offers sympathy or aid. To do so would be to acknowledge weakness, and weakness is corruption. The Emperor protects those who are strong enough to serve, and Worker 6891 Gamma has proven his strength by continuing his duties despite injury. The blood on his workstation will remain there as a reminder to him and to all of us. As the morning progresses, the air grows thicker with industrial particulates. My respirator, a simple cloth mask blessed by the ecclesiarchy, filters out the largest particles, but I can taste metal and chemical residue with every breath. My lungs have long since adapted to the environment, though I know the cough that racks me each night is getting worse. Sarah tells me it sounds like grinding gears now, and sometimes I taste blood in my mouth when I wake. But such concerns are selfish. My body belongs to the Emperor, loaned to me only so long as I can serve his will. When it fails, it will be recycled into corpse starch to feed other workers, and my soul will take its place at his side in eternal service. This is not morbid thinking. It is the blessed truth that sustains us all. The morning quota bell chimes at 11 Imperial Standard. I've produced 2,847 bolt shells, each one blessed and sealed according to protocol. My productivity rating for the morning is 97.3%. Acceptable, but not exceptional. To achieve exceptional ratings, I would need to produce over 3,000 shells without sacrificing quality. Only the most blessed workers achieve such numbers consistently. Still with us in the crushing depths of Imperial industry? Hit that like button if this tale of endless toil resonates with your soul.
The mid-shift klaxon signals our 15-minute sustenance break, but reaching the nutrition dispensers requires a journey through the factory's bowels that consumes half our allotted time. I join the silent procession of workers, filing through narrow corridors lined with pipes that leak scalding steam and cables thick as a man's torso. The walls are covered in devotional scrolls and purity seals, their parchment yellowed by decades of chemical exposure, the high Gothic script barely legible through layers of industrial grime. The dispensary queue stretches for nearly 300 meters, a serpentine line of grey-clad workers waiting for their midday ration. Above us,
Servo skulls hover in lazy circles, their red eyes constantly scanning, recording, cataloguing. I keep my gaze fixed straight ahead and recite the litany of patience under my breath. The Emperor's time is not our time. His will unfolds in its appointed hour. Blessed are those who wait in faithful service. The worker in front of me, a woman whose designation I don't know, begins to sway slightly on her feet. Her breathing becomes labored, and I can see the telltale yellow tinge around her eyes that marks the advanced stages of chemical lung. She's been working the acid treatment stations too long, and the fumes are finally claiming their toll. In the outside world, in the times before the long night, she might have been given medical treatment, reassignment to cleaner work. But this is the 41st millennium, and mercy is a luxury the Imperium cannot afford. When she collapses, hitting the ferrocrete floor with a wet sound, the line simply moves around her. A sanitation servitor emerges from a wall alcove within minutes, a spidery construction of rusted metal and flesh that begins the process of corpse removal. Her body will be processed in the reclamation plants within hours, her biomass converted to corpse starch, her clothing sterilized and redistributed, her work assignment transferred to the next citizen on the waiting list. The thought police observer stationed near the dispensers takes note of our reactions. I maintain careful neutrality, neither showing distress that might indicate dangerous empathy, nor pleasure that could suggest heretical callousness. The proper Imperial response to death is acceptance, acknowledgement that all things serve the Emperor's will, even in ending. Finally, I reach the nutrition dispenser. Today's ration is a thin gruel made from algae protein and vitamin supplements, served in a metal cup that's still warm from the sterilization process. The taste is reminiscent of rust and decay, but I drink it without complaint. Around me, other workers do the same, their faces blank masks that reveal nothing of their inner thoughts. The return journey to Assembly Line Delta takes the remaining 7 minutes of our break. As we file back to our stations, I notice Voxcaster stations have been activated throughout the factory. Tall Gothic speakers crowned with skull imagery, their brass horns polished to a mirror shine. This can only mean one thing. The afternoon's mandatory spiritual guidance is about to begin. Cardinal Vex's voice booms across the factory floor as I take my position at workstation 7749. His words echo from every speaker, accompanied by the deep, resonant chanting of the ecclesiarchy choir. Citizens of the Imperium, today marks the 847th anniversary of the liberation of Mordian Prime from the foul corruption of the Greenskin menace. Let us remember the blessed sacrifice of the 12th Mordian Iron Guard, who gave their lives that we might labor in the Emperor's service. The production line continues operating during the sermon. The Emperor's work must never cease, but our pace becomes more rhythmic, more ceremonial. Each movement of our hands is a prayer, each completed bolt shell an offering to the God Emperor's glory. The Cardinal's words wash over us like a tide of righteousness, reminding us of our place in the greater tapestry of Imperial might. Remember, faithful servants, that beyond our world's atmosphere, the enemies of mankind gather in the darkness. The heretic, the mutant, the alien, all seek to corrupt the Emperor's domain. Only through your unwavering dedication, your ceaseless toil, your absolute faith do we hold back the tide of damnation. As if summoned by his words, the factory's lighting flickers momentarily. It's subtle, just a half-second dimming that most workers don't even notice, but I've lived in Hive Tertius long enough to recognize the signs. The primary generatorum is struggling again, drawing power from backup sources that weren't designed for continuous operation. The tech priests have been working around the clock for weeks, conducting maintenance rituals and appeasing the machine spirits that keep our world functioning. But their efforts may not be enough.
The power fluctuations have been growing more frequent over the past month. Last week's sub-level Kappa lost power for 3 hours, and the corpse grinders stopped functioning. The smell of decay that followed was overwhelming, even by under-Hive standards. Rumors spread through the worker dormitories, whispered conversations in the dark corners where the servo skulls couldn't hear clearly, about equipment failures on other levels, about production quotas falling behind, about the possibility that our world might be deemed inefficient by the Administratum. Such thoughts are dangerous, but they persist nonetheless. What happens to a Hive world that can no longer meet its Imperial tithe? What becomes of 10 billion souls whose labor is no longer required by the God Emperor's war machine? I push these heretical doubts from my mind and focus on the rhythm of production. Inspect, bless, seal, pass. Each bolt shell perfect, each movement precise, each prayer sincere. Cardinal Vex's sermon continues, describing the glorious battles being fought across the galaxy, the heroic sacrifices of Space Marines and Imperial Guard, the righteous fury of the Emperor's champions. But even as I work, even as I pray, I cannot shake the feeling that something fundamental is changing in our world. The very air seems to carry a tension that has nothing to do with chemical pollutants or industrial stress. The Emperor protects, but even his protection has its limits.
The afternoon shift brings darker omens than flickering lights. At 14:30 Imperial Standard, the primary Generatorum doesn't just flicker, it dies completely. The factory floor plunges into absolute darkness for 17 seconds, a void so complete that the only sounds are the dying whirs of machinery and the sharp intake of breath from 10,000 workers who suddenly understand how precarious our existence truly is. Emergency lumens activate with harsh red light that turns everything the color of blood. The backup Generatorum kicks in with a grinding roar that echoes through the factory's Gothic arches, but the power flow is unstable. Assembly lines move in stuttering jerks, servo skulls drift erratically through the air like dying insects, and the atmospheric recyclers emit a high-pitched whine that sets teeth on edge. Tech Adept Vex Theta 12 appears at my workstation faster than his mechanical legs should allow, his augmetic eye blazing brighter red than usual. Binary cant streams from his Vox grill in urgent bursts as he interfaces directly with the factory's machine spirits, seeking answers to questions we common workers cannot comprehend. Worker 7749 Delta. His voice carries a static overlay that wasn't there this morning. Report. Did you observe any anomalous behavior in your machinery prior to the power interruption? I consider his question carefully. In the Imperium, the wrong answer can mean death, but lying to a tech adept is heresy of the highest order. The bolt shell casings displayed minor irregularities in their blessed markings approximately 20 minutes before the failure, Tech Adept. The sacred oil seemed to resist the metal. His mechanical head tilts slightly, processing this information. Around us, other workers continue their duties under the hellish red lighting, but I can feel the tension building like pressure in an overloaded plasma conduit. When the machine spirits are angry, when the Omnissiah withdraws his blessing, terrible things follow. Acceptable observation, Worker 7749 Delta. Continue production. Report any further anomalies immediately. But production isn't the same under emergency power. The blessed oils that should flow smoothly from the sanctified dispensers come out thick and sluggish. The primer mechanisms require 3 attempts to seat properly instead of 1. Even the air feels different, heavier, more oppressive, tinged with the metallic taste that precedes a storm. 2 stations down from me,
Worker 7751 Delta begins to show signs of distress. His movements become erratic, his blessing recitations stumbling over words he's spoken perfectly for years. I watch from the corner of my eye as he fumbles with a bolt shell, dropping it twice before managing to complete the sealing process. The finished shell looks wrong somehow. The Aquila marking appears twisted, as if the sacred symbol had been corrupted during creation. The tension builds until something has to break. At 1547 Imperial Standard, it does. The breakdown starts small. Worker 8934 Epsilon, manning a crimping station 3 lines over, begins laughing. It's not the kind of laughter that indicates joy or even madness. It's a sound like grinding gears, mechanical and wrong. The laughter spreads to the worker beside him, then to another, until an entire section of the factory floor echoes with inhuman mirth. The thought police response is immediate and brutal. Arbites in full carapace armor emerge from concealed positions throughout the factory, their shock mauls crackling with electric fury. They move with practiced efficiency, surrounding the affected workers, while servo skulls descend from the ceiling to record everything for later analysis. The laughter stops as suddenly as it began, replaced by the wet sounds of shock mauls meeting flesh. But it's too late. The contagion has spread. Worker 7751 Delta, at the station near mine, begins to shake, his entire body racked with tremors that have nothing to do with chemical exposure or fatigue. His eyes roll back in his head until only the whites show, and when he speaks, his voice carries harmonics that make my bones ache to process them. "The stars are right," he whispers, though his voice carries across the entire factory floor as if amplified by voxcasters. The angles converge. The sleeper stirs in the depths below depths. Tech Adept Vex Theta 12's augmetic eye blazes like a miniature sun as he processes this breach of reality. His mechadendrites extend toward Worker 7751 Delta, but before they can make contact, the man's head simply comes apart. Not explosively, not violently, but with the gentle inevitability of a flower blooming in reverse. His skull unfolds like parchment, revealing not brain matter, but a swirling void that seems to pull light into itself. The void speaks in a voice like breaking glass. "We have been waiting so very long for this moment." That's when the real horror begins. The emergency lighting fails completely, but the darkness that replaces it isn't natural. This is the darkness between stars, the hungry void that exists in the spaces where reality wears thin. In that absolute blackness, things move that have no business existing in our universe. I hear my fellow workers screaming, but the sounds are wrong. Too high-pitched, lasting too long, echoing with harmonics that speak of throat structures no human should possess. Somewhere in the darkness, plasma cutters ignite like angry stars, the Arbites falling back on training that never prepared them for this. The factory's Vox system crackles to life, but instead of Cardinal Vex's reassuring sermons, it broadcasts something else entirely. The sound of chanting in a language that predates human speech, voices that rise and fall in patterns that make my mind hurt to process them. And through it all, the production line continues running. The tension builds. Subscribe to witness more tales from the dark millennium as reality itself comes under assault.
In the absolute darkness that has consumed Factory Complex Theta 9, I discover what true terror means. The darkness isn't just an absence of light, it's a presence, thick and oily, pressing against my skin like the touch of something that should not exist. Around me, the screaming continues, but now I can hear the awful truth beneath the noise. My fellow workers aren't just dying, they're changing. The first sign comes when worker 7752 Delta, the woman who operates the quality control station beside mine, begins to speak in a voice that belongs to someone else entirely. Her words carry the crisp accent of a planetary governor describing battlefields on worlds that burned out 10,000 years ago. Then her voice shifts again. Now she's a child reciting nursery rhymes in a dialect that predates Imperial Gothic. Then an old man discussing crop yields from a planet that was consumed by Tyranids decades before she was born. The barriers grow thin. Tech Adept Vex Theta 12's Vox Grill crackles beside me. His augmetic systems provide the only points of light in this nightmare, red sensor beams cutting through the impossible darkness like desperate prayers. The Geller field generators in sub-level Tertius have been compromised. Reality bleeds. Geller fields. I've heard the term whispered in the deepest corners of the Underhive, always followed by quick prayers and signs against evil. They're the blessed barriers that protect Imperial ships when they travel through the warp, the shields that keep the horrors of the Immaterium from spilling into our reality. But why would our factory need such protection? The answer comes with a sound like reality tearing. A rent appears in the darkness, not light returning, but something worse. Through the gap, I glimpse impossible vistas, cities that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously, oceans of liquid time where predators swim through centuries like sharks through blood-warm water, forests of crystalline trees that sing the names of everyone who will die tomorrow. And through that rent, they come. The first creature that squeezes through the wound in reality defies description in any human language. It has too many angles, exists in too many dimensions at once. Looking directly at it causes my eyes to water and my mind to reject what it's seeing. But I catch glimpses, tentacles that phase in and out of existence, eyes that blink in colors that have no names, a mouth that whispers secrets that could drive entire worlds to madness. More follow, each one different, each one wrong in its particular way. They move through our reality like infections, corrupting everything they touch. Where they pass, the factory equipment doesn't just break, it transforms. Conveyor belts become sinuous serpents of living metal. Assembly stations grow teeth and begin to feed. The blessed bolt shells we've been crafting all day sprout tiny wings and fly through the air like metal insects, their sacred markings now pulsing with unholy light. The Arbites fight with the desperate fury of those who know they're already dead. Their plasma weapons carve brilliant paths through the darkness, but the creatures they target simply absorb the energy and use it to fuel further transformations. One beast, struck with a full-power plasma blast, doesn't die. It becomes more solid, more real, its presence in our dimension stabilizing as it feeds on the weapon's power. Fall back to Containment Protocol Omega. The Arbitite commander's voice carries clearly through his helmet vox. Seal the factory. No contamination must reach the upper levels. Containment Protocol Omega.
Even I know what that means. The factory blast doors will seal, trapping everything inside while shaped charges turn the entire complex into a tomb. 10,000 workers, hundreds of Arbites, countless tech adepts, all sacrificed to prevent the corruption from spreading to the rest of the Hive. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, such calculations are not just acceptable, they're necessary. But the creatures from beyond the veil have their own plans. As the blast doors begin to rumble below, something vast moves in the darkness beyond the factory floor. Not one of the smaller horrors that poured through the reality breach, but something immense, an intelligence so ancient and alien that its mere presence causes the factory's Gothic architecture to weep tears of liquid metal. When it speaks, its voice doesn't come through the air, but directly into our minds, bypassing our ears entirely. You have labored so faithfully in your ignorance, little ones, manufacturing weapons for wars you do not understand, praying to a corpse god who has been silent for 10,000 millennia. But your true purpose was always this moment, to weaken the barriers, to create the conditions we required for our return. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Every bolt shell we've crafted, every prayer we've recited, every ritual blessing we've performed, it was all part of some vast design we never comprehended. The factory wasn't just producing ammunition, it was conducting some form of dimensional engineering, using our faith and labor to thin the walls between realities. We were not workers serving the Emperor. We were cultists serving something far older and infinitely more terrible. The blast doors complete their seal with a final echoing clang that sounds remarkably like the closing of a coffin lid. Emergency klaxons wail their mechanical death song as countdown timers begin their inexorable march toward detonation. In 3 minutes, the factory will become a crater, and everything within it will be reduced to radioactive ash. But as the ancient intelligence laughs, a sound like the heat death of stars, I realize that 3 minutes might be far too long. Comment your theories below. What corruption has been lurking in the depths of Imperial industry all along?
2 minutes and 17 seconds until detonation, and I finally understand the true horror of existence in the 41st millennium. Not the grinding poverty, not the endless toil, not even the casual brutality of Imperial rule. The real horror is discovering that everything you believed, everything you fought for, everything you sacrificed for the God Emperor's glory was a lie designed to serve powers beyond human comprehension. The ancient intelligence continues its revelations as reality collapses around us. Your species' obsession with faith makes you such useful tools. Every prayer you offered fed us. Every blessing you recited weakened the barriers. Every moment of devotion carved another crack in the foundation of your precious reality. Around me, my fellow workers are completing their final transformations. Worker 7750 Delta, who stood beside me for 11 years crafting bolt shells in faithful service, no longer possesses anything resembling human anatomy. His flesh has become a shifting kaleidoscope of impossible geometries. His voice a harmony of screams that somehow forms coherent words. I can see it all now, Jorik. Every choice, every possibility, every outcome playing out simultaneously across infinite dimensions. The Emperor never protected us.
He couldn't even protect himself. The blast doors that were supposed to contain this nightmare begin to buckle and warp. The creatures from beyond reality don't need to break them. They're rewriting the laws of physics that allow the doors to exist in the first place. What was once blessed adamantium now flows like water, reshaping itself into organic forms that pulse with alien life. Tech Adept Vex Theta 12 makes one final attempt to restore order to chaos. His mechadendrites extend toward the primary control console, seeking to activate emergency protocols that might somehow stem the tide of corruption. But when his blessed augmetics make contact with the machinery, both flesh and metal begin to sing, literally sing, harmonizing with frequencies that predate the birth of stars. "The Omnisia," he whispers through his vox grill, his mechanical voice now carrying undertones of something that might be wonder or might be terror. The Omnisia was never the machine god. It was always them. The knowledge we sought, the understanding we craved, it was their gift, their trap, their corruption spreading through every blessed circuit and sacred gear. 1 minute and 43 seconds. I think of Sarah and little Kira, sleeping in our cramped hab chamber, 17 levels above. Do they know what's happening down here? Can they feel reality itself beginning to fray at the edges? When the detonation comes, will they understand that their husband and father died not as heroes of the Imperium, but as unwitting agents of humanity's ancient enemies? The countdown reaches 60 seconds, and something impossible happens. The ancient intelligence offers me a choice. You have served faithfully, Worker 7749 Delta, more faithfully than you know. Your devotion to duty, your unquestioning acceptance of suffering, your willingness to sacrifice everything for a lie. These qualities make you valuable to us. Join us willingly, and we will spare your family. Your wife and daughter will survive the coming transformation of this world. Refuse, and they will die with the rest when reality completes its collapse. 30 seconds. In that moment, facing the complete destruction of everything I believed in, I discover something the creatures from beyond didn't anticipate. The strength that comes from having absolutely nothing left to lose. They may have corrupted our purpose, perverted our faith, turned our labor into an instrument of damnation, but they cannot corrupt the love I bear for my family. I am Jorik Voss, I say aloud, using my real name for the first time in years. Not Worker 7749 Delta, not a number tattooed on my forehead by uncaring bureaucrats, but a man with a wife and daughter and choices that matter. I am a citizen of the Imperium of Man, and I choose to die as a human being. 15 seconds. The ancient intelligence recoils as if struck. You would doom your family for pride, for loyalty to a dead god who never cared about your suffering? No, I reply, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounds. I would save them from becoming whatever you would make them. Better they die human than live as your slaves. 10 seconds. The factory around us has become something from humanity's darkest nightmares, a fusion of mechanical precision and organic horror, where conveyor belts have become veins pumping ichor through walls that breathe with alien life.
but somewhere in the distance I can still hear the countdown klaxons marking time in steady, reliable Imperial standard. 5 seconds. Even corrupted, even perverted, even turned to purposes we never understood, our work continues. The Emperor may be silent, the Omnicia may be a lie, and the Imperium may be nothing more than a grinding machine that devours its own children. But we built something that endures. We built something that functions. We built something that in the end chooses to destroy itself rather than serve evil. 0. The explosion that consumes Factory Complex Theta 9 is visible from orbit, a brilliant star of cleansing fire that burns away corruption and leaves only ash. In the hab blocks above, 10,000 families lose their providers in an instant. The official reports will call it an industrial accident. The victims will be remembered as martyrs to Imperial production quotas, and new workers will be assigned to rebuild the facility within the month. But in those final microseconds before obliteration, as plasma fire scours away both human flesh and alien horror with equal thoroughness, I achieve something that has eluded me through 31 years of faithful service. I see the God Emperor's true face. Not the golden giant of Imperial propaganda, not the corpse god bound to the golden throne, but something far more profound. The collective will of humanity itself, refusing to surrender even in the face of cosmic indifference. Every prayer offered in desperate circumstances, every sacrifice made for others, every moment of defiance against the darkness, all of it combining into something greater than the sum of its parts. The Emperor protects, but not in the way the ecclesiastic teaches. He protects through us, through our choices, through our willingness to stand against the void even when we know we cannot win. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war, but there is also love and courage, and the stubborn human refusal to kneel before gods or monsters. That, perhaps, is enough.
In the aftermath of the Factory Complex Theta 9 incident, the Adeptus Administratum files would record the deaths of 10,847 workers due to Administratum malfunction, resulting in catastrophic plasma containment failure. The families of the deceased would receive standard death benefits, enough corpse starch to sustain them for 30 days while new work assignments were processed. Sarah Voss and her daughter Kira would join the ranks of the dispossessed, moving to sub-level row, where conditions were marginally worse, but housing was available. The official investigation, conducted by a joint commission of tech adepts and Arbites investigators, would conclude that poor maintenance of the primary Administratum had caused a cascade failure that ignited stored promethium reserves. 17 lower-level supervisors would be executed for negligence, their positions filled by candidates selected through the standard Imperial bureaucratic lottery system. Factory Complex Theta 9 would be rebuilt within 6 months, its production quotas adjusted upward to compensate for the temporary shortfall in bolt shell manufacturing. No mention would be made of warp incursions, dimensional barriers, or corruption beyond the material realm. Such concepts were beyond the understanding of common workers and served no purpose in official records. The Imperium had learned, over 10,000 years of existence, that some truths were too dangerous for general circulation. But in the deepest archives of the Inquisition, in vaults protected by wards older than human civilization, a different record would be preserved. Inquisitor Cassandra Vex would note the unusual resonance patterns detected in the factory's final moments, the electromagnetic signatures that suggested dimensional instability, the curious fact that plasma weapons had proven less effective than conventional explosives against the unidentified hostiles. She would also note the words of the sole survivor, an Arbites sergeant named Corin Thane, who had been outside the blast doors when they sealed. His testimony spoke of voices in the darkness, speaking of ancient bargains and 10,000-year plans, of workers transformed into creatures that violated basic principles of anatomy and physics, of a presence so vast and alien that its mere attention had caused sanctified equipment to weep tears of liquid metal. Most importantly, she would record his final observation. In those last moments before detonation, the corruption had not simply been destroyed, it had been rejected. The factory's machine spirits, perverted and twisted though they had become, had ultimately chosen annihilation over servitude. Even in the depths of heretical transformation, some essential spark of Imperial faith had endured. This pattern would repeat itself across 17 other worlds over the following decade. Industrial accidents claiming tens of thousands of lives, Generatorum failures in facilities that had operated without incident for centuries, workers displaying signs of corruption moments before their deaths in plasma fires that burn hotter than physics should allow. Each time, the official reports would cite mechanical failure or human error. Each time, the deeper truth would be filed away in archives that few had the clearance to access. The Imperium's great strength, its sheer crushing inertia, also served as its protection. Events that should have shaken the foundations of human civilization instead disappeared into bureaucratic machinery so vast that even cosmic horror became just another administrative footnote. But for a few who understood the pattern, who recognized the signs, a disturbing picture emerged. The enemy had been patient, far more patient than human minds could comprehend. They had worked for millennia to corrupt Imperial industry from within, turning humanity's own faith and dedication against itself. The factory workers who died believing they served the Emperor had, in their final moments, served him in ways they never could have imagined. Their sacrifice, willing or unwitting, had closed another wound in reality's fabric. Their deaths had purchased a little more time for a species that measured its survival in moments stolen from inevitable extinction. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, victory often looks indistinguishable from defeat. Heroes die forgotten, their names carved on no monuments, their deeds recorded in no songs. They labor in darkness, suffer in silence, and face damnation with nothing but stubborn human courage to sustain them. Yet still they endure, still they choose, still they stand against the void, not because they believe they can win, but because surrender is unthinkable. The Emperor protects, not through divine intervention or miraculous salvation, but through the countless small acts of defiance that define humanity's long war against extinction. In every factory worker who maintains their post despite impossible conditions, in every parent who sacrifices for their children's future, and in every soul who chooses courage over comfort, his will is done. For in the end, that may be the greatest truth of all, that gods are not born in golden palaces or sustained by grand cathedrals, but forged in the hearts of ordinary people who refuse to kneel, refuse to break, refuse to surrender their essential humanity even when the cosmos itself conspires against them.